and welcome to Borgcast Original Series 2.26 with Anne-Marie and Peter.
Hello! Or Dave 9, as I now insist on being called.
Oh.
I'm an agent from your future.
Okay. So, if I'm not going to be ISIS, what other terror group can I be?
No, you can be my pussy if you like. Oh, there's a look that would look good on audio.
Maybe I'll be Ulster Defence Force or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, last time we covered the Omega Glory.
Oh, didn't we?
Oh, God. And Ralph LB on Facebook said it's not a classic. Bangs on about the US Constitution.
Yeah.
And Todd Smith writes, I was born and raised in Philadelphia where the Declaration and Constitution were written, so I had these covered a lot in elementary school. I always thought this piece of shite was the worst Trek ever written. People always talk about Spock's brain being the worst. I always responded, hell no, have you seen the bloody pile of crap that is the Omega Glory? P.S. Anne-Marie Organ, how about cap turds or maybe craptins?
Craptins works quite well, does it, for bad captains? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great to hear from you.
Yeah.
But tonight we are covering Assignment Earth, written by... Oh, dear. Well, the story's by Art Wallace, but it was heavily rewritten by Gene Roddenberry. It was a backdoor pilot for a series that was never made. Yeah. There might be a reason for that. It was an attempt to get something started to replace Trek, as Trek was threatened with cancellation at this point. The letter writing starts soon, and they managed to save it for season 3, which may or may not have been a mistake. But anyway... We'll find out in a while.
Yeah.
Directed by Mark Daniels, 14 of 15. So he doesn't stick around long for season 3.
No, I don't think anybody in the Might Line does, really.
Well, we're about, again, in the not too distant future, we'll be finding out.
Yeah. Captain Kirk, you interfere with me, you'll change history.
Stop it! Stop it! Wow. What are you? In there!
Malfunctioning. Rocket is deviating from program flight path.
You can destroy it, of course.
We're going to lay an H-bomb on somebody somewhere.
Computers indicate an impact somewhere in the heart of the Euro-Asian continent.
Get me the president.
Roberta, you've got to let me finish what I started, or World War III will begin in 6 minutes.
So, you start with a captain's log. Using the light speed breakaway factor, the Enterprise has moved back in time to the Earth's 20th century. What the actual fuck?
That's a hell of a cold opener, isn't it?
Yeah. And apparently their deflector shield means they've not been observed and they want to know how Earth survived 1968.
Yeah.
They've intercepted a transporter beam and something is beaming aboard, which turns out to be a bloke in a suit with a black cat. What the actual fuck?
So, what I can't remember how they describe it now. It's some weird description of their time travelling anyway. Is a reference to what will more catchily be known as the slingshot manoeuvre, which was first used in Tomorrow Is Yesterday. So, kind of drawing from continuity, but they're being very blasé about their time travel in this. And then, yes, Gary 7 turns up, and you think they'd call for security, but instead Kirk just runs down from the bridge.
Yeah. So, after your teaser, you get Gary 7... or if this is a backdoor pilot, I suppose he's the...
All right, I don't know that one. All right. Well, he's played by Robert Lansing. Did you not recognise him?
I probably did from all of the shit in the 1960s.
Actually, from the 1980s, he's Lieutenant Jack Curtis in Automan.
Oh,
The one who actually did all the work.
Okay.
He's also in 25 episodes of Kung Fu, 29 episodes of The Equalizer, that's Iwa Wuwa's thing, and The Flying Nun. and many more. The voice of Isis the cat, now there's an unfortunate name, I mean obviously it didn't have that connotation then, is Barbara Babcock, who was last seen in A Taste of Armageddon as Mia 5, and she's also heard as Trelane's mum in Squire of Gothos. Isis the cat himself is played by a cat with a name so racist it gives the one in Dambusters a run for its money. No, I'm not going to repeat it here.
Oh, let me have a look. Is it the same as my nan's cat?
Tell me and I'll bleep it. Think so, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Or it could be it's one of the two. Either way, it's not good.
No. So, Gary 7 was living
Gary 7. I mean, really? That's the best sci-fi name you could come up with. Gary 7.
Well, they've all got a number in their name, haven't they, for some reason?
Yeah, the numbers aren't the issue. I mean, that at least makes it feel a little bit futuristic. But Gary? That's the most futuristic. I say you may as well be Dave, really, at this point. Sorry for any Daves out there.
Yeah, oh well. Anyway, he was living on another planet. He is from the right time and the right, he's just been elsewhere. He threatens the crew. He says, oh, but you're from the future. And the planet he's from wants to help Earth survive. Kirk is understandably sceptical, so he wants Bones to do a physical. He starts calling Bones, but then there's a fight because of the attack cat.
Yes, cat attack, battle cats.
Yes. But Kirk wins by phasing him really noisily.
Yeah, I'm not sure they've used that noise before. I presume that's to indicate it was a stun setting, but yeah.
But apparently Spock's nerve pinch doesn't work on him, which never gets explained.
No.
And so he's taken off to be examined by McCoy. Meanwhile, Spock rather likes the cat.
Yeah, well, not really that surprising that Spock's a cat person, is it?
No, not really. So then you have a Star Trek Teams meeting.
Yes. Probably seemed really futuristic then. Now it just feels a bit sad.
Oh, yeah.
You're on mute, Chekhov. You're on mute.
Yeah. Well, he seems to be at Spock's station.
He does, because Spock's in the conference room cuddling the cat. But I like the fact they're using the specialisms of the crew. I mean, that's quite nice.
Yeah. And then among the various things that are going on in that year that could be an issue are a coup, an assassination, and a launch of orbital nuclear platforms. Now, is this the Star Wars program? That came later, didn't it?
Much later, and it never took off, literally.
Yeah.
I mean, putting nukes in orbit just seems like it. I mean, maybe for all I know they have, but as far as we know they haven't, and that would clearly be a massive day. I mean, if it blew up on launch for starters, that's not good news, is it? So yeah, no, it's not the brightest of ideas from Gene Roddenberry, this.
No. Meanwhile, Gary 7 is in a cell, but he's got a sonic pen to turn off the force field and stun Matt Damon.
Yeah, he does look like Matt Damon, doesn't he? It's a bit odd, that one. I thought it was a sonic screwdriver to begin with, but then you realise it's a pen. So the sonic screwdriver debuts in Who in the 1968's Fury from the Deep on the 16th of March 1968, and this episode of Trek was first broadcast on the 29th of March 1968, so it's definitely a case of, great minds think alike.
Well, it depends whether the writers of Who had the opportunity to see that Trek.
No, they wouldn't have done by the time they'd written it, so...
Yeah. Anyway, the cat runs off to a security alert. Someone is preparing to beam down. They arrive too late. Why did they not, after he was all doing all the beamy shit before, why did they not have some security stationed there anyway?
Yeah, or an off switch for the transporter.
That would help.
Yeah, that would help so many times already.
Yeah. Anyway, Gary 7 walks through a cloud of smoke and appears through a vault in an incredibly brown room.
Everything is brown. Yeah, suddenly we've jumped to 1970s, haven't we?
And then he says computer on, and a wall moves, and a big screen, fair enough, with an unnecessarily large round thing that looks like the thing you put a spare tyre in.
Yeah, that's the view screen, which occasionally activates, but not very often for some reason. And the colour display on the right, that's just from the M5 computer from the previous episode.
Okay.
Yeah. Or previous book one, I should say.
And then the computer says, what's the purpose of your mission?
This is the voice of Barbara Babcock again, by the way. It's not James Doohan for a change, anyway.
Yeah.
But then again, I guess he wasn't going to be in the new series, so...
He sort of gets cross that he has to sort of identify himself, whatever. He says, I'm Supervisor 194. But anyway, he says...
Yeah, that's a bit of business that doesn't really go anywhere, does it?
Yeah. Anyway, he then says, look, the mission is that the Earth has developed technologically before it's developed sufficiently culturally, and they're there to try and prevent the planet destroying itself, and there's two agents... 201 and 347, and they're both missing. Their ancestors were taken from Earth about 6,000 years ago, and then it's their descendants are now these two agents. They were set, after the other side launched a rocket, they were set to make this one malfunction. But there's 1 hour, 27 minutes to launch. They can't be found. So Gary 7 says it's got to be me. So the computer gives him 3 sets of fake ID. Meanwhile, you see a woman in a really hideous pink and orange outfit.
This is Roberta Lincoln, who's played by Terry Garr, who went on to become a relatively big star. She was in Tootsie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 3 episodes of Friends, but we won't hold that against her, and a bunch of other TV shows over the years. Apparently she hated working on the show, as Roddenberry kept insisting they shorten her miniskirt, creep that he was. She later refused to talk about her appearance in this, which makes me suspect that worse may have happened. But anyway,
probably.
She's clearly supposed to be the figure the youth will identify with. Good luck with that, blimey. And she gets the mud comedy music as well, so...
So she runs to the office because she's going to be late, but she says, they're not here, they can't dock your pay if they don't know you're late, and then Gary 7 appears. He immediately mistakes her for 201 and reveals some of the technology, including a small green talking computer. And then he gets her to say what's happened, and the computer automatically types out everything she says, and she's amazed by this. Turns out she was employed by 347 on 201, and she thinks they're researching for a new encyclopedia. He then shows her the fake ID that says he's a CID agent, and she initially then...
CIA, I think you mean.
Yeah, sorry. CID is
Wrong
the UK.
nation.
Yeah. And she initially believes him. They then find out that 201 and 347 have been killed in a car accident. Meanwhile, Kirk and Spock are trying to find him by beaming down, and then Scotty's giving them directions and saying things like, go 159 true, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I got to love their clothing. I mean, Kirk looks like he's cosplaying as Columbo.
Yeah, he does.
And Spock, that hat. Whoa! Yeah. Well, the beanie was bad. This one's quite something, although worse is to come.
Worse is to come. Worse is to come. And so then Scotty says to Spock and Kirk, you've got to go up. He's at a higher elevation. They get there and go up, and then he turns, just as this is happening and he's got to run away, he says to the cat, I'll be right in. And Roberta sort of looks at him and he's, it's a trained cat. And I'm like, yeah, the cat's an alien as well. But then as they come in, Roberta wrestles Kirk and then Spock, and as a result of wrestling him, pulls the hat off and sees his
Why doesn't
ears.
he neck pinch her? He's got plenty of opportunity. I mean, he looks... Nimoy looks really awkward struggling with her, but oh dear.
Meanwhile, Gary 7 vanishes and reappears at the launch area.
Yes, McKinley Rocket Base with a badly composited rocket at the back of shot of the Paramount lot. It looks terrible. 2 policemen enter the office, the first played by Ted Gehring, who was in the original Battlestar Galactica and a sheriff in Galactica 1980, as well as BJ and the Bear!
Hey there, where you going? Not exactly knowing. Who says you have to call just one place?
Scotty manages to not only beam Kirk and Spock up, but the policeman as well, in a rare bit of incompetence there. This is played for laughs rather than the serious gaff that it is, and they're just sent back with no sort of mind wipe or anything.
No explanation.
Which they've done in the past, haven't they?
Yeah.
That one when they went back and accidentally picked up that pilot and then some security men, they did at least wipe their minds, I think. We get some obvious stock footage of Mission Control Center, which then stupidly cuts to an even more obvious set that looks so cheap
it does.
in comparison. A security guard checks Gary's ID, understandably suspicious because he's carrying a cat around, which is a pretty dumb move.
It is weird, isn't it? I mean, you'd think they'd know enough to know that it'd be far more normal in that society to have a dog with you.
Yeah.
And he could have claimed it was an assistance dog, like a guide dog or something, couldn't he?
Well, yeah, but although not on a military base, I shouldn't think. I mean, anyway, he gets Dirt Parade. There's a lot more stock footage for padding as Gary hitches a lift in the boot of a car to the launch pad. Spock with a new hat. That's even worse.
It's awful.
Yes. And Kirk beamed down to the centre and immediately arrested, so that was worth doing. Of course, they beamed down with phasers and communicators. Hooray!
They've learnt nothing.
No contamination of the timeline to worry about here, then. There's seemingly hours of Scotty watching stock footage of the rocket before he finally spots Gary fiddling with its circuitry and tries to beam him up. But Roberta uses the transporter safe, because that's a thing, and transports him back to the office of Brown. Quite how she manages this when she's got no idea what she's doing, I do not know. Kirk points out how surplus to requirements he and Spock are in this story, which we'd already noticed, but underlining it was a stupid move.
Yep.
Plus, how does Kirk record this log entry? Because he's currently captured.
Yeah, and he says he hasn't got access to his communicator,
Yeah.
so...
After more tedious stock footage, Kirk and Spock just standing there. The rocket takes off, but Gary overrides it and introduces a malfunction with the warhead arming itself. Now, in a nice scene, I like this bit, Uhura is monitoring Earth's military transmissions in lots of different languages, with the sort of suggestion is that she understands them all, which is great. And yeah, I was about to say in keeping with Strangely Worlds, which is a bit back to front, but anyway, more on that later. Scotty is coordinating things from the transporter room, and we've got Chekhov and Sulu following the rocket's progress. So it's like, wow, the rest of the crew are doing stuff now. It took them making a weird pilot for another series to actually give the regulars something to do. Hey-ho. Roberta hits Gary over the head and threatens him with a sonic pen, which apparently has a kill setting. He tries to persuade her of his mission. Spock finally nerve pinches a guard and they get themselves beamed to the office of Brown. Vulcan can't use the controls and Kirk gives in and lets Gary save the day, detonating the rocket, which, you know, is not the greatest of resolutions, is it?
No.
Kirk and Spock have discovered that things were always supposed to pan out this way, which is one of those time travel paradoxes, isn't it? And you kind of think, well, why bother watching this then?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Isis has transformed into
A woman?
played by April Tatro, apparently. Although, I mean, quite where they were going with that, we do not know. She immediately turns back to being a cat. I think it's just Roddenberry. We're going to get sexiness in this somehow. Let's have a sexy cat woman. Oh, yeah. For our closer, Spock tells Stephen and Roberta they've got some entertaining experiences ahead of them. Oh, no, they haven't. Because this ain't being picked up for a series. The agents do return in Trek, however. You remember this at the end of Picard Season 2? When they're revealed to be working for the Travellers from Next Generation for no good reason with Wesley?
What?
You've forgotten Season 2 of Picard already, haven't you? Yes.
I didn't bloody like it.
That was one of the more pointless continuity dot-to-dot falling around bits of business they inserted for no good reason.
Okay.
But not the worst thing about Season 2 of Picard, to be fair. So how do we rate this? Classic or just toss?
I'm not sure it's either, because I'm not sure it's really an episode of Star Trek.
It's not. That's the basic issue. I mean, the cat's a great actor. I'll give him that. But
yeah, I like Spock and the cat.
There's too much stock footage, making it very dull. I mean, you know, if you're going to do a pilot, at least don't fill it with stock footage. It just makes it look really cheap.
But the focus is more Gary Seven and his mission and stuff. It's not...
And what's worse, his mission isn't exactly thrilling. Tamper with a rocket so that it malfunctions. Oh, whoop-de-doo.
It's like, I looked at that when they was doing all that and all those scenes and I thought, yeah, Men in Black 3 does this way better.
Yeah. You don't need Kirk and Co in this story. They're just gooseberries in their own show, aren't they?
And that's why I can't answer the question, is it classic or toss? Because it's not really a Star Trek
it's
episode.
Not Star Trek, I'm afraid, yes.
Not really. It's a Gary Seven episode that happens to have a cameo by some Star Trek people.
It's a completely different and rather crappy show.
Yeah.
Right, well, there we go. So it's neither because it ain't Trek is the final verdict. Okay, well, let's find out what other people think.
And we've heard from Catbus Matt, who writes, the backdoor pilot, with the emphasis on backdoor because it's bum gravy.
Yeah, and that's not unfair, I think.
Yeah.
Lee Metcalf from the Black Dog podcast has this to say, Gary 7, what you get if you order Sapphire and Steel from Wish.
Yeah.
Which, it definitely has that sort of a feel about it, doesn't it? It's
yeah.
the ITC. I never liked those shows particularly. I know they do have a big following, but they don't work for me particularly, and this doesn't either, so...
And we've heard from Jeff Hyman, who writes, it feels like an American attempt at Doctor Who.
Yeah,
it's
not as good, though.
No. It's a strange episode, but I don't hate it. For some reason, it's my father's favourite episode of the original series. Maybe he doesn't really like the original series, Jeff, and he likes it because this isn't really an episode of Star Trek.
Yes, that could be it. Yep. The only thing I can think, anyway. And let's face it, an American attempt at Doctor Who, we saw that back in 1996, but it wasn't pretty. And we've heard from Boss. There are a number of weird things in this episode. The first one being right at the start, where the captain's log suggests that going back in time is a routine procedure as simple as pressing a button. That doesn't fit with what we see before or after, which is true. The other main oddity was the cat.
Yeah.
Surely Gary Seven's mission would be much easier if he didn't have to take it with him everywhere.
Yeah.
And it also made him more conspicuous. I'm pretty sure it's not standard procedure for CIA agents to turn up on site with a cat.
Yeah.
I did like the cat, though. And I like this episode. Okay. The main thing I liked was the fact that right up until the end, you couldn't tell if Gary Seven's mission was to solve or cause a problem, and this gave Kirk and Spock a real dilemma, which is true.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't work for a continuing series, would it? Because you know now he's the good guy. So that's, weird way of approaching it. Should they stop him or help him? Despite all the main crew being around, Mr. Seven gets more screen time than any of them in what for a while more resembles an episode of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. or a Bond film. He manages to be both a Bond villain with the cat and Bond himself with his special pen. I also like Roberta, who was fun and got a lot more to do than the usual original series female characters. Okay. Mainly just being ditzy, wasn't she, to be fair? I wonder if they were planning a spin-off with her, Gary and the cat lady, but it never got made. That's exactly what they were planning.
Yep.
Up until the end, when they had to decide whether to help Mr. Seven, Kirk and Spock didn't have much to do. They got captured again, and despite trying out some new headwear, Spock's ears were revealed. Have they considered not sending him at all in these situations? Well, you'd think. While it was odd for a season finale not to focus on the Enterprise and its crew, I found it to be enjoyable and a nice change from the recent episodes we've seen. Well, it's certainly a change, but I guess whether it's a change for better will depend on your taste. Random final thought, he finishes. When the cat was talking while on the gantry, I was reminded of the 1970s public information film with Charlie telling kids to always tell their mummy where they're going.
Charlie says next time we go fishing, we should stay very close to Dad where he can look after us.
It's a shame you don't have play-out music anymore, as the Prodigy tack, thanks for making me say Prodigy again, that samples it would be perfect.
Charlie says always tell your mummy before you go off somewhere.
Until season 3. Oh, there we are. We'll be returning for that. Yeah. Okay, so it's got one fan anyway.
Yeah. What did Sampo and Yona make of this?
Hello.
Hello.
So we just watched an episode of the Gary Seven show, also featuring special guest stars Kirk and Spock.
What happened in it?
Lots of people looking at screens and counting down minutes, and then some more people watching at screens and then counting down miles.
Yes.
Yeah, so pretty odd episode. I mean, basically, like I said, it felt like the regular cast and crew were only sort of guests in this episode. Even
I didn't know beforehand, since this is my first round watching the show. Didn't know it's so political. I just thought they were going through space, uncharted territories, and facing green furry creatures, and they have lots to say about their daily politics.
Yeah, Star Trek has always been very idealistic and tried to tackle problems of today by using parallels of the future, sometimes better and sometimes worse.
What was idealistic in this one?
Well, that instead of continuing the arms race, maybe you should de-escalate and launching nuclear weapons into the orbits. Let me check my notes. Bad idea.
Yeah, the people in Saudi Arabia is only having like nuclear fallout.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about the maths, but I think the point of the limit was that if it exploded above that, everything's fine. They just nuke the orbit, I'm sure it's fine. I mean, Russia won't mind, or the Soviets at this point. So, but I mean, never mind that. What's the deal with the cat?
Where did they find the cat that felt so comfortable in the Seven's lap?
I don't know. Well, it wasn't comfortable in all the scenes.
No, not the first one. So the tail wiggling, and also where does Spock find all those hats?
Expect him to have a collection somewhere. I mean, it's a crap disguise. Never works. I mean, the hat always comes off every single time. I don't think there's been an episode where he's had the hat
it's
where...
It's illogical. He should know how to disguise better.
Yeah.
He should learn.
I agree. I mean, at least have a hat you can sort of tie below the neck or something.
He had multiple hats in this
he did.
episode. And all the women, instead of Rebecca, was wearing fur. Maybe they were cats as well.
Yeah. And I mean...
But the cat wasn't wearing a fur when she was played by human those 5 seconds.
Yeah, that was really odd. Was she like trying to show the other woman that Seven's mine or something?
I don't understand. Well, I at the beginning, the episode, I asked if the cat was his wife or so. I wasn't entirely sure, and then she was wearing those sexy outfits in the sofa, and
helper agent / concubine or something.
Yeah, and Isis, isn't it from Egypt?
Yeah, it is.
She's a god.
The aliens or whoever had taken humans from Earth from thousands of years ago, though. Maybe they took them from Egypt, although Gary 7 didn't look Egyptian. But again, the Enterprise people said that he was a perfect human. Again. So
yeah, was there another like bad guy that was shaped like a cat?
Well, there was the shape-shifting witch or something that was a big cat. Or mostly a shadow of a big cat.
Yeah.
And they turned into a bird.
Yeah, the birds. I loved the birds. Yeah. More of those birds, please.
I don't think... Not a big spoiler, but we don't see the birds again. So this was a pretty slow and tedious episode. And I told you that this was supposed to be a pilot episode for another series that never really happened. So in addition to being a quite bit slow and boring, it was also sort of... I said last time the next one is better, and I guess, well, objectively... But the last one, well, had more of an emotional effect on us. This was just sort of boring. Well, okay, but the good news is, I guess next time we'll be watching Strange New World, so yay.
Yay!
We haven't actually seen season 2 yet, so this will be fresh for us. So let's...
Some of us have never seen the old ones either.
And for good reason, it appears week by week. So yeah, let's hear from you next time. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it is an episode of the Garrow 7 show featuring a guest appearance by Kirk and Spock.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, those hats are a shit disguise, and it's not logical to keep trying it. Why doesn't he do like a hairpiece? Nobody would try and rip that off.
But borrow Chekhov's wig from the start of the season.
Yeah!
Spock's millinery supplies. That's obviously a sideline he's got there.
Yeah.
Good luck making sense of the cat, because, I don't think the writers knew what they were doing with that one.
No. I think that was probably a Roddenberry insertion, wasn't it?
I'm pretty sure, yes. I thought the cat was pretty well trained, actually.
Yeah.
I was quite impressed when Spock was stroking it. He was doing the little paw thing they do when they're happy. It was like, oh. But yes, lots of people staring at screens, which will crop up again in Star Trek The Motion Picture. Yeah. And launching nuclear weapons into orbit. Bad idea. Yes, I thought so. But there we go. And some people taking a fresh run at Strange New World Season 2. So be interesting to hear from you about that.
Yeah.
Particularly considering it's a bit of a roller coaster ride, I think it's fair to say. Now, next up we hear from the God of Llamas.
Got to fix care. Gotta get back in time. Now, this is an episode that I hadn't seen before. I'd only really experienced the story as part of the James Blish novelizations, and I wasn't too keen on it when I read that through, really. And, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I guess we're following hot on the heels of the Omega Glory, so it couldn't be much worse than that, really, could it? But, yeah, this episode is very clearly exactly what it is. It's a pilot for another series. I'm sure we would be into that, so I won't label that point. It certainly doesn't feel completely like a Star Trek episode. It definitely feels like it's something else. It's supposed to be the start of something else, and you can't escape that. I mean, basically, the crew of the Enterprise are secondary characters. And the thing that really stands out and makes this not a proper Trek episode, you can tell this isn't a proper Star Trek episode because Captain Kirk doesn't save the day somehow at the end of this. No, he stands aside and lets Gary 7 do it. So, yeah, you can tell that this isn't proper Trek. Shatner wouldn't have let them do that as proper Trek. God, I wonder what Shatner was thinking when they did this, though. Maybe he was hoping for lucrative guest star spots in the other series. But anyway, I don't know. And it's certainly an odd episode to end the season on. I guess they figured by this point it's the end, so there's nothing lost. If this does anything bad to Star Trek itself, and if it doesn't really fire for another series, then it's not too bad. And if they get the green light for the other series, then yeah, but it's just an odd thing to do, really. really. It's just an odd thing. You do have to wonder if people would have come back to Trek if this had been the final episode. To be honest, I think Ending on the Omega Glory would have been a worse ender, but yeah, I don't know how that was received in 1968. So it's a different one to really judge. And I guess the season was already potentially in trouble anyway, because it wasn't renewed, was it? It wasn't renewed, as we all know, at the end of this. It only came back after a bit of a struggle. So yeah, I don't know. Strange. It's not a bad episode as such. The actor who's playing Gary Seven, whose name I forget and didn't write down, sorry about that, he's not bad. There's certainly something watchable about him, but at the same time, he's also very laid back, a bit slow and aloof, and I don't know if he makes for an engaging main character. He certainly makes for not a bad guest star when he's standing there against the chemistry that you have between Shatner and Nimoy and DeForest Kelly. It kind of works like that, but would he have carried his show on his own? Obviously, the powers that be didn't think so, and yeah, I guess I'm inclined to agree with them on this one. He's just too calm and in control. There's not enough action, really. I don't know, maybe their series would be different, but in terms of this one, he wasn't a bad antagonist for the Enterprise crew, in as much as we get to see them acting anyway, so yeah, it didn't feel too bad. There were a couple of nice bits. Obviously, the Enterprise crew finding themselves out of their depth more rapidly than they were expecting to do. The usual bits of interplay between Kirk and Spock and everything. And it was really nice to see Kirk doing the conference to decide what to do with the entire ship, allowing everyone to weigh in. That's very democratic. That's kind of what you expect to see more of Starfleet, and where they ended up going with the Next Generation. But yeah, that was very nice to see that about. I do wonder if we'll see more of that in the future going forward in season 3. I very much doubt it. The character of Roberta could have also been interesting. Kind of basically, she was like Doctor Who's companion. He was a bit like Doctor Who, wasn't he? Given he had the sonic screwdriver as well. I guess it was meant to be a ballpoint pen or something. But yeah, obviously my mind went to a sonic screwdriver replaced. I'll be surprised if yours hasn't as well. But yeah, she was clearly the entry point character to the show, and although she starts off being a little bit your typical ditzy character, she does actually gain some strength and self-determination and motivation as the episode goes on, so she could have been an interesting character. But yeah, I don't know, I feel at the same time she would have been reduced to a love interest thing between her and the cat, especially given the cat turned out to be a sexy woman, because of course it did. What else was it going to be? But yeah, there's certainly some odd bits, and obviously there's the sonic screwdriver alike, which, you know, would have been running concurrently with Doctor Who in the 60s, so I'd be very surprised if they didn't steal that from Troughton's run. But the main thing, of course, is the incredibly casual use of time travel. The Enterprise has just gone back in time just cause. It's like, yeah, okay. I know it's the thing that was established they can do in Trek, but if we recall the last time that they went back into the 1960s, it was a bit traumatic. The ship did not do very well. And although they managed to get back to their own time, it wasn't that straightforward. So yeah, this is very odd. Obviously, this is paving the way for the Department of Temporal Affairs to come into existence and everything, but it's certainly an odd thing that Starfleet's doing this so casually. So yeah, that makes it feel a bit odd, really, when it comes to Trek. Although, you know, again, we're only 2 years into Star Trek at this point. What's normal and what's particularly strange, it hasn't really been defined yet. So why, yes, at this stage of the series, why not? It probably, at the end of the day, is best not to think about, which I think is probably the best way this episode is dealt with as well. As I say, it's not bad, but it's also not great either, and it's not one that I'd particularly want to come back to. And of course, the question is whether it would have actually inspired me to want to come back to season 3. Well, I guess we'll find out when we watch the next episode, which is the exciting Spock's Brain. Hey, that's not going to get any worse. Oh, no, unfortunately, we're going to wait a little while for that gem, haven't we? So that is a shame. Oh, well, I look forward to the next episode of Strange New Worlds. Yes, I've been waiting a while for that one. But yes, as to this one, I am, of course, ever looking to find out what everyone else made of this. I hope that by the time this goes out, everyone will have managed to have defrost. And until next time, glory to you and your cast.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, you're right. Gary Seven is not an engaging main character at all.
Not particularly charismatic, is he? No.
Yes, Roberta does gain strength as she goes on, but yeah, if Jean wouldn't be had anything to do with it, she would have just become a love interest. It wouldn't have lasted.
Well, and she's clearly just there to be, you know, what the youth are supposed to identify with. All that stuff about, my generation and, you know, not all of us are anti-government and stuff. It was just cringe-worthy, that was. I mean, I would have been more cross with this if it wasn't for the fact that Omega Glory was so bad.
Yeah.
I think this gets a bit of a pass just because of its production order. Speaking of which, by the way, yes, we're as well as being delayed by Strange New Worlds, actually Spock's Brain isn't the first in production order for season 3. So we get let off that a little while longer as well, which is something of a relief. Although quite why they decided to go with that as the first broadcast one, I do not know. But yeah, season 3, that's a whole nother kettle of fish, isn't it?
Yeah.
Surely you know by now.
Drew and Tracy.
It's Drew and Tracy time. Drew and Tracy time. What sense do they make of this?
So we just watched Assignment R.
We did.
And what do we think of that one then?
Well, like I said earlier, before we even started watching it, it's a classic.
You did look it up and you was like, oh,
when I saw what one it
was
a classic. Yes.
Oh, okay. So let's go through some stuff. So they go back in time.
They go back in time
to 1968
for historical research. You're just going using time travel now to just look stuff up.
Indeed.
Yep.
So they intercept Mr. Seven.
Gary Seven.
When he's transporting from Earth to an undisclosed...
From another planet, 1,000 light years away.
That's right, sorry, yes, that's the wrong way. Yeah, but they didn't he didn't want to disclose where he'd come from, did he? So he's a bit of a mystery man.
Yes.
But why were they being so shirty with him?
I know. Straight away, Kirk's like, "Oh, we don't. You might be a birdie."
Yeah.
So it's just,
Hold
I
on a
know,
minute.
it's silly.
You've almost fucking kidnapped me. I was just on my merry
The whole
way.
way through, even when it gets to the end, like when he's like, "Oh, I don't know whether I can trust him or not to like not blow up the rocket." He's not done anything wrong.
No,
you've just been an arse.
And like when he comes through the transporter and like they're in the bay and like Spock's trying to do like the Vulcan
neck grip. Yeah.
I don't want to say death grip. Neck grip on him.
Yes.
And it's like, what are you doing?
Yes.
Why are you being arsey?
Yep.
So we've got to mention Isis the cat.
Isis the cat, yes.
That cat was making some funk-ass noises all the way through. But now I get it because it was almost, that was like him talking or the cat trying to
Yeah,
talk.
and it's like some kind of metamorph or something.
Yeah, but we did laugh at cutting to the end when like Mr. Seven is like trying to detonate the bomb on the ship and the cat's like right on his back and like in his face.
That's a normal cat.
Yeah, that is just a typical cat, that.
Talking of which, them bits always make me laugh. So he's trying to like get the rocket to go wrong and he's like pulling out the wires and that. What? It's like Doctor Who, one of the specials, when he's trying to make the rocket not take off. He's got to press 1,000 buttons. If you opened the bonnet of our car and pulled one wire out, it'd fuck it, wouldn't it? So why have they always got to do like so much to make stuff go wrong?
Yeah, we did love quite a lot of the still photographs.
Every time we went to the rocket, it was that one picture with like a bit of grain over the cloud, doesn't it?
You could see the dirt on the picture, couldn't you?
Yes.
But also when it went to like the mission control room.
Yeah, it's like
you know,
footage of the actual one, yes.
But they're like saying, oh, you know, the bomb's about to detonate or whatever, and they're all calm in there. You'd be like, what? Like panicking mode.
Definitely. We like the sonic screwdriver. Gary Seven got a sonic screwdriver.
Well, was it a sonic screwdriver? It kind of did a spark, and then like these things came
Shoots
out.
like ecstasy, doesn't it?
It was
we
the
should get one of
happy
them.
pen. Very much a happy pen.
So Gary Seven's a supervisor, isn't he? Do you remember that from Picard season 2? Wesley Crusher is a supervisor. Do you remember this? He's got Orla Brady as well. He's got to get Renee Picard to make sure that she makes the ship. Do you not remember any of this?
What now?
Oh, this is the thing. This episode goes into the future lore of Star Trek, doesn't it? Because supervisors are still around Picard season 2.
Alrighty then. So we did laugh at the science nerds at NASA.
Yes, they've all got like.
Why do they always wear short sleeves?
I know.
They got their.
That's the look of a science nerd.
Badges on
and like a little
pocket.
skinny tie.
Yeah,
yes.
and their pens.
Yep.
None of them wear like long sleeve.
No. Oh, yeah, it's a Stone Cold classic for me. This, it's excellent. You do know that this was Gene Roddenberry getting through the back door a pilot for a new series. This is why at the end Spock and Kirk says, "Oh, you've got more adventures to come," because he was trying to do a spin-off. It was going to be the Gary 7 an Earth spin-off. Yeah, but it works. You know, there's a lot of it is Gary 7's adventures in this episode, but I like this. I like this a lot. It's a classic.
You're really smiling.
Yeah, I like this a lot.
Goodness,
what do you
like
reckon?
It was alright, yeah.
It's entertaining. It's a comedy episode.
Comedy episode.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, it was like, fluff.
Good stuff.
Anyway, leave it there. You're still smiling.
I am.
Say it once more. It's
classic and it's good.
Anyway, leave it there.
Okay.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Tracy had the same reaction as me to the whole Picard season.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. And I think Drew's been hit by the happy pen. I think that's the only explanation for this one. Classic, really? I don't know anybody else who thinks of this as a classic. Gosh. And as you point out that Kirk and Spock are barely in this.
Whereas I thought
that stock footage, so much stock footage.
Yeah, it's so grainy. And you're right, they would be like absolutely bricking it in the control room.
Yeah,
they would. Yeah, and he's got to press 1,000 buttons to make your rocket malfunction.
Yeah,
no, one is probably enough.
Yes, you think, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And, I'm afraid Happy Pen, I just think it's the name of the latest sex toy.
Well, you would, wouldn't you? Anyway. Let's find out if Puri has enjoyed this.
Or indeed the Happy Pen.
Yes.
Hello, Orgs. Getting into a bad habit of recording these things on my phone at the last minute, but here we are. So feedback for Assignment Earth. Now, people have already mentioned, you probably have already brought up as well, this was what we call a backdoor pilot. Don't Google that without a safe search on Word to the Wise. Still explaining that one to the wife. Yes, the gist of it is that you do a pilot episode for a new TV show, but rather than paying money for making a pilot, you kind of have everyone show up in an episode of something that's already running. You get a free episode of telly, and you might get a pilot running if people say, hey, I'm interested in that sort of thing. And as a result of this one, it does kind of make Kirk and Spock, most of the crew guest stars in their own episode. We see a lot more of Gary Seven and his assistant and his sarcastic computer and cat than we really see of Kirk and Spock. I mean, basically, aside from the antics on the ship, them going down to engineering, and again, it almost feels if we didn't have a couple of bridge scenes, it would almost feel like they were just going to try and do this with minimal main cast. If you think about it, it's mostly Kirk, Spock, Scotty. McCoy, I think, he's in it briefly. He's in it for like a scene. But, again, there's, I think, 1 or 2 scenes in the bridge. But really, you could almost imagine that we shoot the main cast stuff at the tail end of another episode and then bring it in here. But production stuff aside, the plot of this one, I've got to admit it, I know some people who absolutely love this episode. And I think the love comes from people who would have been interested in a Gary Seven Assignment Earth series. And to be honest, I might have dug it. I think if we did have a series with kind of very serious but slightly inhuman Gary sort of trying to make sure Earth doesn't destroy itself, not a bad message. Helped out with his slightly ditzy but actually very clever assistant and his cat that sometimes turns into a sexy lady. And a mildly sarcastic and prickly computer. You've got the grounds for a fairly entertaining 1960s, 70s TV show. The weird thing in this, actually, I suppose, because like I say, the episode itself kind of meanders, because you're following people you don't really care about, because you're not invested in them. A lot of it is like Gary Seven milling about air bases and pulling wires and stuff, and because you don't know his plan, because they did try to keep it that you weren't quite sure if he was a goodie or a baddie, and they tried to keep him ambiguous. So I think that was meant to be the tension of, should we be intervening, should we not? And I just didn't get any of that. Also, some things that annoyed me. First thing, like Kirk and Spock beaming down there. So they've travelled back in time because they've done it a couple of times now, so they now know how, so they're going to go back and observe some sort of rocket launch or something. And they get accidentally involved in this. That's okay, we're travelling back in time just for basically historical observation since we can. But I suppose I was actually looking at broadcast dates. This was 1968, I think. This one was broadcast, I can't remember, 68 I think, or 69, but basically this was broadcast, it would be 69, and it was broadcast before the moon landings. Why didn't they go to the moon landings? It was in process in that year, the Apollo program was well in advance, was running at that point. But hey, there's that. Also, why does Spock beam down? Genuinely, you are your most risky guy on the entire crew to put in 20th century Earth, and you dress him up like someone dressing as a stereotypical Russian agent to boot, with a woolly hat and stuff. But alien planets you can maybe forgive, but this is literally Earth, and you've put the one alien on your crew down on the planet. It's nuts. And that sort of thing is, again, things like that bothered me. I spent more time looking at dates of the Apollo program and general space travel, because they're saying, oh yes, orbital weapons were quite common then. It's if you set this in 1975, you could have maybe said that speculation, but you were just about going to the moon at this point. You're already saying, oh no, we've got orbital nukes in the present day. A bit weird. So overall, this one doesn't really work for me, but if you love it, good on you, and I would have watched an Assignment Earth series. So all that remains for me to say is do keep up the good work. I always look forward to the podcast and the whole feedback, maybe on proper equipment in the next one. But until then, bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
I think, would any of our other feedbackers have watched a Gary 7 series?
It sounds like Drew would have done. He was quite keen. And Boss, I think, was quite keen too.
Okay.
But, yeah, no, not for me, thank you.
No.
I mean, it wouldn't have had any spaceships in it, let's face it, so it would have failed on the first hurdle.
Yeah, and you're right, the episode meanders, doesn't it?
More than a bit. More than a bit.
And why the fuck does Spock beam down? He's the only alien on the crew.
It's because he's many people's favourite character. Loads of people were tuning into Star Trek because of Spock. So that they couldn't not feature him for that reason. But yeah, it makes no logical sense, ironically.
No, not at all.
Right, well, as we've mentioned several times, this is the end of the season 2 of the original series, so therefore we are switching to some coverage of Strange New Worlds. On the 1st of February, we shall be covering the first episode of season 2, The Broken Circle, which sounds more like it should be a Deep Space Nine episode, but there we go.
It does.
But yes, we shall be looking forward to that. It'll be something of a change of pace.
Yeah. We've got a little while of Ulysses to go, though, on the other
We
feed.
do have a while of Ulysses to go, yes. But feel free to join us with that if you enjoy some very, very strange stuff. But until 2 weeks' time, take care. Cheery bye.
Bye.
The Star Trek theme was written by Alexander Courage, and here was arranged and performed by Drew Barker.
The artwork was created by Andy Palastides.
All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
Find our website at borgcast.libsyn.com.
And we have a YouTube channel as well.
Send emails or MP3s to borgcast@gmail.com.
Or you can find us over on Mastodon. Our addresses are on the show notes for this podcast.
Shut it down!